I want to officially welcome everybody to this webinar on social inclusion, where we have 3 guests that are supposed to do a roundtable discussion on social inclusion. This webinar is a part of the NWA's work within the ISRICM project, which is a project under the Social Innovation Initiative. So it's funded by the European Union. And if you see on my behind me, we see some of all the partners that are in the project also working with different topics in each of the project countries. But this webinar is about social inclusion, and the overall umbrella topic is actually for the NWA and for the ISRICM project to help Ukrainian refugees into work settings, work organizations, and how we can help work organizations to develop better inclusive policies. So therefore we invited the 3 of you today. So a warm welcome to all of you. Maybe we should start with a short introduction of the 3 of you. Just if you're able to do it, just combine yourself in 1 minute or so. And Karina, can we start with you? Who you are and what you're passionate about?
Of course. Thank you so much, Nina, first of all, for organizing this and for the invitation. So my name is Karina Dantas. I'm based in Portugal. I'm the CEO and owner of a small company called Shine to Europe, and we work mainly around inclusivity. So I'm very connected to the topic, I guess. This ranges a number of different aspects, and there will be enough time to discuss them, I'm sure. But all in all, the idea is to support the implementation of more inclusive communities and a more equitable society. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll hear more from you later, but thank you, Karina. And Eva?
My name is Eva Turk. I'm an associate professor and senior researcher at the University of Applied Sciences in St. Pölten in Austria. And here I lead the research group on inclusive digital community health. So this is part of the Center for Digital Health and Social Innovation. And within the social innovation, we do some work on inclusive societies as well. We work a little bit more with elderly and migrants. So kind of like I'll bring a little bit of those aspects, but I'm looking forward to the discussion today. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yes, and thank you for being here. And Lars?
Well, I suppose I was easier to invite, of course, to some extent, but it's my great pleasure to be here as well. Lars Münter, International Director of the Nordic Wellbeing Academy, and a co-conspirator with Nina in the work in the ISRICM project. My work with social inclusion has sort of begun with health campaigns of various kinds, where the inclusion of the end user, the public, was, of course, crucial to the impact of any kind of actually really effect. And of course, sometimes, of course, you can have a qualified discussion about whether you want to do things top down or bottom up. But when it comes to a lot of different processes within the health domain, you can design it top down. But if you want it to work, it has to be bottom up. So that's the key element, of course, to working with social inclusion. And then, of course, across different sectors, not just in health, but in any kind of elements related to sustainability, to accountability and social progress. The element of getting the user included and hence also progress, not guaranteed, but at least making it more probable would be key to that.
Thank you, Lars. And now I want to invite into a quick round of tour de table around some of the specific topics that I know that you're working with, and you'll have around 5 minutes each of you. And feel free, for those of you who are listening in the chat, to write down questions for the speakers, if you have any, while they're talking, and then we might have time to take them. So Karina, starting with you. You mentioned that you're based in Portugal, of course, but you also work with European projects in more general. So you know a bit about the European landscape. But when you work in Portugal around social inclusion, how do you see that role? What are the needs for social inclusion here in 2026 as you see it?
Well, I guess that's very difficult to compact into 5 minutes, but maybe highlighting 2 or 3 points. So on one side, I will start with the positives. There's a very positive cultural side, I think, that Portugal in general is not that polarized. This is changing a little bit, societal wise and politically wise as well. But Portugal is not famous for big, bloody revolutions. We are usually calm people, and this shows also in all of the aspects that have to do with let's say, being open and friendly within society. So I would start with a positive. Then maybe one of the strong negatives is that our medium income is very low, and this seems to be a way of life. So whether we are better or worse in terms of economy and stability, at the end, our wages are always not that high, which of course kind of crushes Maslow pyramid. So if you are always trying to have your basic needs fulfilled, how can you then consider the highest problems or the higher level problems in society? And this very much relates with organizations as well. So if organizations are always in that struggling point, then it's very difficult to implement well-being policies, to find ways of improving the quality of life of workers or others. Maybe I would then mention a point that I don't think is Portuguese, but is very transversal. And this would go, I think, for inclusivity in many aspects, but now focusing it a bit more also, sorry, on the working environment. The problem is that a lot of the issues and the challenges that we have to trying to have a work environment or a society that accommodates everyone equally, that provides equal opportunities, because I think this is what we call social inclusion, which seems to be sometimes a difficult concept to address, but I won't go there yet. But just to say, instead of considering how to socially include people, I would rather consider how can we have a society and a working place that is accommodating, equitable to all, that where people of different needs and different preferences and with different characteristics can always find their place. And at the end, what I think is transversal to Portugal and to all of the countries is that most of the challenges are the same for decades, so they are stable. They are usually intersectional. You have a number of people who are always very much more challenged than the others, and this has to do with gender, with age, with social economic background, also with your basic literacy or education, and it's quite difficult to escalate socially. And I don't think Europe is improving on this aspect. The problem is that if you come from somehow a difficult background, it's 10 times more difficult for you to get stable than for other people. So if we want to discuss social inclusion, then we should maybe reconsider how can we allow people to have equal opportunities to fit in society and less on small measures that are just trying to tackle the more visible challenges in inclusivity, I would say.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't pass too much my time.
It was perfectly timed. Thank you, Karina. Very, very much food for thought, I think. And I have a lot of questions that I've scribbled down for later. But let's just continue with this tour de table. Eva, You have actually been living in different countries, traveled a lot in different cultures. You are a Slovenian who have lived in Norway and now live in Austria. So you have a lot of experience on different cultures, different work settings. But how do you see some of the things that you're working with today in terms of social inclusion and digital innovation? Are there any good hopes or good tools to use, or what do you see right now in the work that you're doing currently?
Yes. Yeah, so I think the experience of living in different countries, coming from Slovenia, is one of the parts that where I feel this inclusion and being part of the really feeling at home is something that is very important to people. It does come down to the community that accepts you and that you manage to kind of like establish around you, and it's really different experiences from different countries. I do have to say that living in Norway for me has been a very pleasant experience. Maybe also because of the hierarchy, the flat hierarchy that the Scandinavian countries have, where you felt that kind of like you are much closer to having the possibility to directly talk to your boss rather than kind of like this is the case in Slovenia or maybe Austria. But just a little bit about the work that we have been doing in the recent years here at our center. We dealt mainly with inclusion when it comes to digital health and working with older population. Most of you have probably heard about the digital determinants of health. And this is one of the determinants that is really, really important as we are moving our systems completely to digital. How do then we include older populations? And this is, in a sense, what we have seen, it's the digital exclusion, right?
Yeah.
Which is a new form of inequity in a way. So digital participation today is no longer a luxury. It's really kind of like a prerequisite that we can basically talk about social participation. So what we have seen in Austria when discussing this digital transformation and the social inclusion when it comes to digital transformation is that it's one thing that obviously also Karina mentioned. It is, we focused on age, but then it's the place of living. Is it rural? Is it urban? Is it more kind of like the income status? Are you living alone? Do you have a family? Do you have next of kin that can help you? And what we have seen really is that mainly it is the psychological burdens. So older people often have the feeling that kind of like if they touch too much, they can break something, right? It's this fear of breaking something and having this functional limitations that kind of like you don't see well, you don't have this fine motor skills. There are different cognitive changes that require specific hardware or software adjustments in a way. Then it's different type of language because a lot of things this is in English and maybe you are not so familiar with English and so on. So these are this kind of like the barriers when it comes to entry. And what we have seen, like through our research, is that of course you try to also what Lars mentioned with regard to inclusion, it's develop solutions with the people, so with the end users, but it really needs to be some low threshold, right, for them to be able to take the digital solutions on. There's also a lot of interest-driven learning, so there is motivation when this solution will solve a problem that I have, right? If I'm gonna pay my receipts kind of like online, and I know that I will save some money instead of me going to the bank, I will have the motivation to do so. And then it's also the peer-to-peer learning. So kind of like the seniors, what we have seen in a couple of regions in Austria, seniors teaching seniors. But we also, in the interviews that we did, was quite interesting that senior ladies prefer younger boys to teach her rather than the girls. And this is kind of like also combined with the upbringing, right? Because girls are not so tech savvy as the boys are, and you see this still in the older population, that this is what happens quite a lot. So kind of like in a sense, what we really try to do and what we found out is that the technologies that are developed, they need to be developed with the population to have this kind of like user aspects, because only then they are going to be kind of like taken seriously and be used. So Austria now has quite a few initiatives really to increase the digital health literacy of older population. It's also kind of like trying to use a lot of like WhatsApp groups and so on to fight, the loneliness and so on. So it depends. In smaller areas, in rural areas, this works really well to connect people. And it's really then kind of like also trying to have this kind of like support volunteers to go to people to kind of like walk them through how to install something and work with it. So these are, kind of like some of the things that we have been working with recently.
I'm so happy that you actually also described some of the things that are working, that are positive, that are future forward thinking, that are coming from, as you say, the bottom up and actually have people involved. So that's really nice to hear. And just a reminder to everybody who's listening, please, if you have any questions, you can write it in the chat, and you can either just write it for everybody, for all the speakers, or directly to one of the speakers if you heard something that you want to have them elaborate a bit more on. So, Lars, 5 minutes. And I know you, so I know that I have to be strict on time with you. How have social inclusion for you been something that you've been working with within the field of empowerment and public awareness? How is that a factor in your work, and where do you see any new? Maybe we should focus on the positives. Any things that are really working out well.
Well, I suppose, ironically, since I am trying in many other ways of focusing on a salutogenic approach, in what we do, we often focus on things that are not working in our systems, which is, of course, the opposite. But on the occlusive side, like I said in the introduction as well, my initial focus was on the social inclusion in terms of thinking that when we're talking about that would be, for instance, social infectious diseases, they are truly social. They cannot appear unless we have people socializing. So also by definition, the solution to some extent is also by involving the users in those solutions. From the beginning in infectious diseases, whether we are talking about Ignaz Semmelweis or John Snow in London, figuring out things that are in the social arena that had to be sort of dealt with, had to be observed, was the key to success. It couldn't be done in a lab. So in the same sort of onset from the infectious diseases, we move into different kinds of other elements where the role is the same. It might not be a disease that spreads via a bacteria or a virus, but when we, for instance, build houses that are not healthy, you embed the bug, you might say. You establish the foundation for something as well. So within the area of health, inclusion of the users in the solution, observing by curiosity and humility, and then with dignity, ask them about what's going on, is a fundamental issue. But moving from infectious diseases then and also chronic conditions, quite early on, you move into things what Karina and Eva also touched upon. For instance, things that are within the built environment, maybe, or that are digital components, where you have people that are not users that are building something for someone else. And hence, only by including them in the process can you have a sort of an idea about how you do that. There's a wonderful sort of principle that I've been very much inspired by initially, which is fairly simple, developed by an Irish guy called Cormac Russell, the ABCD element, where we are talking about asset-based community development, because your mindset in that is one where you're looking for strengths, you're looking for things that are working, you're not looking for things that are, of course, broken. You assume by definition that any community, any group would have strengths. You just need to figure out what they are and then help them be guided, and help yourself maybe be guided towards using that potential for something good. So that's a factor in the work on empowerment. And of course, once you uncover that strength, suddenly you have part of a solution, and can make things work.
Yeah.
So that was maybe below 5 minutes, because you need to be strict on time.
Yeah, and then I can actually throw a question at you, Lars, but also Eva and Karina, feel free to join. We have a question from Anna Christina, and I think that Karina already. Hi, Anna Christina. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. Do you want to ask your question aloud?
Hello, everybody. Sorry, my English. Thank you for your thoughts. It's very pleasant to know there is a huge team working on these issues. And my question is about intersectionality. When we are talking about differences, and Karina touched the point, as you work on these issues and contexts, I'd like to know if there is any references, good practices to make this work in schools, in labor context, or even in social environments of interaction and leisure time.
Yes. Thank you so much, Anna Christina.
Thank you.
And Karina, you already answered in the chat, but do you want to elaborate on the answer?
Yeah, well, I was just providing a short reply while while I saw the question of Anna Cristina, because I think it's quite relevant. I mean, usually we always start seeing things on what is missing and not that much on what can be the added value of certain life experiences. Actually, I didn't mention this initially, but it's a good point now that you raised it, Ana Cristina. When we think about the Portuguese system for revalidating competences that were acquired during the lifetime, this was implemented many years ago. Maybe sometimes the devil lies on the details and the implementation was not perfect. And this sometimes also makes us lose good ideas, because the overall idea behind this was actually very good, which was to provide you with a school diploma when you didn't go to school, for example. You were older, you only finished, let's say, the fourth grade, but then you worked all your life. And it wouldn't make much sense to send you to school like with the small children or in night shift. So then you had a different program where you could show what you have learned during your professional life. And this could be considered, well, you have a specific process to make you accomplish the next school year so that at the end you could have a school diploma. But based on your own experience, you actually had to do like a portfolio of the different activities you did, your professional life story. So it was really interesting. Again, with some gaps, but the idea was exactly this one, was that you learned so much during the lifetime, and then how can this be somehow put forward and get it get back to you as relevant. This is an example, I think, of a good idea that maybe needs to be further reshaped for the future. But if it's not really improved, maybe it's lost. But then a very quick note as well on the current working environment. And again, this is a pity because I think that it will favor probably again more the highly educated people rather than those that need the most. But the new working environment is not that much set on stone, like you need to have this school degree to work on exactly this. Especially now with AI and all of the things and online work and etc. For example, I talk for myself. The people that I hire to my company are not necessarily the ones with the best grades or that have a specific degree, but ones that have a lot of different skills, soft skills, that very often also have this multiculturality aspects that are easily adaptable, that like to travel, that are happy to know different people and that are acceptance. So you see, we are already discussing a number of skills that have to do more with the person that you are rather than your baseline competences. And this is a positive point, I think, in order to enhance this inclusive aspects.
Definitely, and really good point, and interesting also that you created this thinking about who you want in your organization and how to work smarter and better together. Lars, you raised your hand.
Well, these different TV shows about cooking where someone cooks something in advance. And in this case, of course, I would point to also, and I'll share in the chat, a conference paper that Karina and Eva and I and others wrote for a conference on integrated care yesterday, or sort of last year, where it's a focus on, of course, that some of these issues that you just touched upon also are suffering to some extent because we're moving into a digital age where the digital system do not necessarily support that intersectionality as well. So one thing is the human side and how we support in our organization. The other thing is how do we embed so that it becomes a design and not sort of a thing that we need to be chasing all the time because the underlying design doesn't work for it. But I'll share it in the chat and I hope that also would inspire you some.
Yeah. And Eva?
Maybe on this note as well, what is going on a lot is also the task shifting, reskilling, and things like this in different countries, different organizations. That it's I think bringing also the part of kind of like taking the different skills that people bring, and in healthcare, I'm just giving a lecture for the students afterwards. We do talk a lot about this interprofessionalism and stuff like this, and then it's the connection. So one thing is, of course, bringing the different skills, but then because I work a lot with digital, is also kind of like where then this, kind of like we have both, and I think this is part of this inclusion that we need to learn to do, in a way, both things. It's using the digital to the best with the human component, right? And it's quite interesting because probably some years back when we talked about social inclusion, it was much more with regard to kind of like how can we bring maybe kind of like migrants in the country and integrate better, or when it comes to the older populations and so on. Now suddenly we have like this kind of like the complexity that is kind of like an added level or layer to it. And I think this is very, very interesting also with regards how the work is shifting throughout the globe with everything that is going on.
Yeah, that is really, really interesting. So moving on to the next part, or the second part of the webinar, a deeper dive into all of you again, and now it's a maximum of 2 minutes because the time is still running. So Karina, I know that you also have a background in social work, and of course a lot of the things that you do now are within that topic still. But sometimes when we talk about navigation through employment rules and legislation in different European countries, it sort of sometimes could, or sometimes you can sometimes hear it as a bad excuse of not, including people, or that it's too difficult because of legislation, or is that really so? Is it really that difficult to be inclusive on a workplace because of the legal elements, in your opinion? And what do you see? What could we do in practice to sort of put down some of these legal barriers, if there are any?
That's actually a difficult question. When you talk about the legal aspects, they are always these are always very
Very
difficult questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe I would answer in an easier way, let's say. On one side, yes, I mean, I think there are, of course, legal aspects that are difficult to overcome at this point, especially if we talk about migration, for example.
Mhm.
If I will give an example again of Shine. We have people hired in different countries, but if they don't have a Portuguese address, then they can only be hired as consultants and not as full employees. And
Mhm.
of course, this is part of how the system works. But we have been debating, for example, a more connected European labor market, and we
Yeah.
still have this happening. So it is connected, but at the end, things are, after all, a bit different. And the same applies for a number of very small rules. And here, if I go back to Portugal, we were very, how should I say, advanced in our times in terms of inclusivity and in policies that are actually fostering fast and quick inclusion some years ago, and we are actually going backwards, unfortunately. Well, the same as a lot of countries in Europe and in the world. But the truth is that very often these legal aspects and regulatory, etc., are taken as ways of disencouraging migration, for example, or of creating barriers that should not be there. But we should also consider that some things are not actually a legal issue, but they are very much concerned on how organizations implement legal aspects. For example, if you consider flexible work, and I have been actually trying to advocate a bit for more flexible arrangements for mothers and fathers, especially, and for people who have small children and need to balance their work life and still be able to work a lot if they want, but also be able to concile this well with their personal life. And the truth is that there are a number of possibilities, but organizations can decide how to apply them. And this is that part of the legal sphere that is always very difficult to accomplish. Managers of organizations in general and the public organizations, unfortunately, are usually not good examples on this. need to want to do good things. They need to want to trust the employees. They need to want to have people happy working for them. And when you have this, of course, this will have always some hindering moments and moments where people will not correspond. But if you don't have this trusting environment, then at the end, it's always this tension between unhappy employees and the bad employers. And this is not good for everyone. And surely it's not inclusive at all.
No, no. Thank you so much, Karina. And yeah, Eva.
Can I just build on this because it's also my experience in the different countries, right? Well, I have like when I moved to Norway, I worked for international multicultural Norwegian kind of like Norwegian origin company, and for me this was. It was mind-blowing in a good way because everything was done for people to feel good. It was also for people to feel the belonging to the company. So the company had like, I don't know, in 110 countries across the globe, more than 20,000 people working. But and the headquarters was in Oslo, and there we were like 3,000 people from across the globe, and it was we all had the common purpose and so on. So this was really, really important. It didn't matter where you come from. And what I also, just building on what Karina said with regard to happy employees and so on, what I noticed is that Norway has this really strong emphasis on work-life balance. So I'll just give you an example. The first month when I started to work, we had every Friday we had some kind of like gathering for all of the department. And then, this was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then my boss, like half past 2, said like, okay, kind of like have a nice weekend. See you on Monday. And I was like, oh, you're leaving already? And he said, yes, I need to pick the kids from the kindergarten. And I said, oh, that's nice. And I thought like, okay, this is like one off because before I was living in Slovenia and there it's like you work until 5, 6, whatever, right? And this happened like every Friday. Yeah. So it was. I understood. This is what's important. It's important that kind of like you have from the possibility from the company to live your life and kind of like and that the work is a big part, but it's not the main part. And so that's one thing. And the second thing that I really found so interesting was also what you mentioned, Karina, with regard to finding the strong skills. And this is also back to you, Lars, with the ABCD, right? Kind of like start with what's strong, not with what's wrong.
Yeah.
And this is part where it really empowers people. Of course, for me it was difficult. I didn't speak Norwegian. My English was relatively okay, but you have kind of like these issues, and you move to a new country and so on. But you felt welcomed, and I think this is very, very important part that you feel welcomed. On the contrary, then when I see in Slovenia that because I had the affiliation now recently, it's like they always try to find out what you are doing wrong. And I think this is the part where it's also, for then other people to come in from a different country to navigate your way, where you constantly need to you are not welcomed, but you are in a sense kind of like trying to find your way through.
Yeah.
I think this is really important for anybody that is, thinking about changing countries and new employment.
Yeah, to consider also the cultural mindset that are within the workplaces. Yeah, interesting. Thank you. And moving on to you, Lars, mindsets. What do we do when the policies and the programs we might have jotted it down on a beautiful piece of paper, but if the mindsets aren't changing, what do we do? What is the single biggest mental shift that managers and colleagues they need to make to move from tolerating diversity to actually building actively together inclusive teams with foreign newcomers? What is your opinion on that, and what tends to get in the way of that shift?
Well, the very short answer is that the profound mind shift is one where you see that vulnerability is a strength. And of course, the sentence sort of almost doesn't make sense, but still is very true. You have to see that the diversity and the vulnerabilities of each of the different employees can add flavor to the overarching system. I've used the analogy also of colors. If you want to paint a perfect picture, you need to be aware of all the different colors you have available. You might prefer blue or red or whatever, but unless you understand all of the different qualities of each of the different colors, you will not be able to create a masterpiece. And the same also goes for organizations. Since we are human beings, the different colors that we represent, the different skills we represent, the different mindsets create something that can be a masterpiece if we use it for good. So the profound change is seeing a strength in vulnerability. The more element is, of course, that a lot of our different leaders and managers and systems are not recruited to do that. They're recruited for a more command and control mindset. Some of them, like Eva said before, a culture where a failure is not an option, or errors are not an option, which is also ironic to some extent, that we all know that making mistakes is not just human. It's also often what we learn from. So sometimes, and throughout human history, people making mistakes was the key to some discovery that was suddenly made, because it broke the assumption of what was possible. So that is both the sort of the key mindset that we should have, and also the key mindset that often blocks that approach. Thinking of the context of this, well, it is a long journey where we also need to be really conscious of, in organizations, like Karina mentioned, being conscious of recruiting for diversity, because you want more colors in your available, because you want eventually to create masterpieces. That's of course what Karina does every day. But the point here is, of course, that to some extent that you really are conscious of that. Maybe sometimes you can recruit people that are of the same strength and of the same kind, and you can use them to go really fast towards blah blah, but maybe you really want to go slow, because the element is resilience, and the point is not necessarily to every time to do it by tomorrow, but to be able to do it continuously over years and years. So it's not a sprint, but a marathon.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Lars.
Thank you.
So just a quick question for the audience that are listening. Anna Christina says bye and take care, Anna Christina, and thank you for joining. And please, please stay in touch. I hope you have our contacts. So a follow-up question for you, and please drop a question answer to that in the chat. When thinking about your own community organization, what is one concrete thing that you have seen, or maybe you wish that you've tried it, in order in terms of welcoming someone from a very different cultural background or different professional background into your team? Any good tools, best practices, or things that you wish you have done in that time? And then drop it in the chat if you have any good tools for us, so all of us can become even smarter at including people. So we've talked a lot about social inclusion, But we can't talk about social inclusion without talking about equal possibilities. And all of you have touched upon that in different kinds of ways. But equal possibilities, what does that mean? How do we create even more of that in a workplace? What could we do as one or two steps already tomorrow when we go to work again, that could create even more equal possibilities for everyone? And please feel free to take the work if you have any good ideas.
Well, for me, it will not be what I'm going to say, not from today to tomorrow, but I think it is about creating role models and acting as a role model. And what we have done in various organizations is developed mentoring programs, both kind of like the old school mentoring programs, but also the reverse mentoring programs, because this is also where it's, it goes both ways. And I think this is very important to have in mind that all of us have something to contribute to kind of like to make the workplace a better way. And I think in particularly if there are people from different backgrounds and so on, it's important for the people in maybe leadership positions to understand the different picture and the different necessities that people bring with them. I think this part of kind of like, one thing is the mentoring, another thing is listening and understanding how you can make the work a better or the more diverse and inclusive place.
Yeah, I'm very much agree with you, Eva. And actually next week we have a webinar on leadership, because it demands something from the leaders to have inclusive workplaces, definitely. Yeah, any other thoughts from Lars or Karina?
Well, if I may, I would just add one thing that I think all of us tend to forget with age, and I feel that as well, which is still keeping your your mind open. I mean, very often we have this idea of what we think is the worker that you want to collaborate with. How you already have some kind of expectation of how things should be done, and you also have the impression that you know how they are well done or not. And I certainly have that myself. And every time we work with people, especially from different places, if you can overcome this and be open, you also tend to learn and learn that things can be done differently. And sometimes they work well and sometimes they don't. But having this possibility of just trying to open a little bit your own mind to things that can be done some other way is really difficult, I think. And I try to keep it on my agenda, even if sometimes I cannot do it. But I do think it is something we miss in the workplaces. We have this kind of idea of what should work, and we very often don't keep this open mind enough.
Yeah.
And thank you, Eva, for the hearts.
And a thumbs up also from Stephanie. Yeah. So we have.
I can maybe also add from a different perspective. One of the often, I mean, you have a tendency that you like your coffee in a particular way, and you have meals that you really like that you also that you always would choose if you went to a restaurant, and you have a sense of the kinds of movies you like, maybe, and so on. But once in a while, it so happens, of course, that you do not get to choose, but are maybe invited to a family where they cook something different, or you are not in charge of selecting the movie for this particular event, or you are, and so on. And of course, sometimes, well, it happens that it's not a kind of music for you, or the dish is odd, maybe. But many of the times it's throughout your life when you really think something clearly that really made a change, because it also surprised you. You didn't expect to get that sensation from that movie, from that music, from that particular kind of meal. So to sort of, to some extent, also to echo Karina, but it's not just, of course, in the microcosm, but also in the trajectory of our lives. Those experiences are the more profound, and by allowing that inclusion to appear in our workplaces, in our communities, that is, of course, a way of designing more of those profound experiences.
Yeah. So create space for that also, for these experiences, and create space and time also. You also mentioned that earlier on, Lars, that time is also of the essence here. So we actually have 2 comments in the chat, and Stephanie Otto says, Stephanie, do you want to comment yourself with the camera on, or should I? Yes, you were there. Yeah. Hi, Stephanie.
Yeah, of course I can comment. I will try. So this was just reminding me to my studying. When I studied in Cologne at the Sports University, we had so many different intercultural parties, and every country, all these students from these different countries had to introduce their country. And I like that very much. It was really amazing because you could get together more easily. You could get to know everything about their culture, about their way of living, about their food, and also about their movements, probably Greek dance or something like that. It was really a fun, and I think this, in a very simple way, could be included into teams. If you build up international teams, you could try out anything similar. Maybe you start with a cake or whatever. It's very
it doesn't have to be like big plans on big papers and writing very formalized things, but actually just creating the space for it, as we already talked about.
Right.
Thank you so much. I will just put a survey in the chat about the webinar, what your thoughts on it was. We still have some minutes left, and we still have 1 question from Henrik. But I want you to take 2 minutes to answer it. It's very, very short, but it's something that we would be very glad that you do, because it's something that makes us even better at creating these webinars, but also understanding if we need to twist anything, or what you actually had out of this experience. So, Henrik, do you want to turn on your camera, Henrik, or should I just read aloud what you're writing, or are you still with us? Yes, you are.
Yes, you can do it.
Okay. Hi,
Hello.
Henrik. Nice to see you. Henrik is a partner of the ISRICM project also. So he's one of the other Danish partners, and is working with Ukrainian refugees as well. So he's asking you, what concrete measures can municipalities and employers implement to translate salutogenic principles into daily labor market integration practice? For example, when we talk about Ukrainian refugees. So looking at the positive things, instead of not, Eva said something about looking at what's working with how did you frame that?
Start with what's strong, not with what's wrong.
Yes, what's strong, what's not wrong. Yeah.
If I can give you a really strong example, it's not, maybe it can be applied to the Ukrainian refugees, but it happened with the Syrian refugees in Oslo, through the municipality, because the municipality was they have people who then need to find accommodation for the refugees. And there was a woman who was finding kind of like houses for the refugees. And she said, like, it was so many, and because it's in the Syrian culture, they really want to thank you. And they didn't know how to thank me. So they invited me for dinner. So she said, like, there were weeks where I was eating every day Syrian food for dinner. And she said, like, it was so delicious and so on. So they started discussing why not make this as a startup and to bring the families together. And they started kind of like a small restaurant in a food hall first. Now it's all over Oslo. I don't know if it has around Norway as well. But she then left the work at the municipality and became the CEO. And they have this kind of like, I don't know how who's the owner and so on. But this is one of the really, really nice examples that I have seen how it can, through the municipality, the social innovation part,
Yeah.
the startup, and
Yeah.
now kind of like a success story with the restaurants, Syrian restaurants in Oslo.
Wow, what a cool story, and
Very nice.
success and heartwarming story, huh? Yeah. Lars, you raised a hand and then you.
Well, we are running slowly out of time, but I would also, which is of course also about Syrian refugees, but the same would apply also to Ukrainian refugees to some extent because they have skills. In Denmark, of course, we use many of those skills from their many good culture skills in the agricultural sector, but a case in Sweden where they observed that many of the Syrian refugees were really qualified within the clothing industry. So they have above and beyond skills in a particular case that very few Swedes would actually have. So even though it wasn't initially something that they really were thinking about, I mean, they were curious enough to ask, what are you really good at? And then turn that into something that they could use. So the same, of course, would apply, is something we should apply, not just when you're talking about refugees, but be mindful of us that most of us have strengths that we might be hiding a little bit too well.
Yeah. Yeah. And what a beautiful ending sentence to social inclusion. That finding the skills that might be hidden, but be curious enough to ask for them. So that was 1 hour, and I'm so happy that all of you were here, and I hope that of course we couldn't cover everything within 1 hour, but I hope that we dig a little bit deeper into some of these topics, and I hope that to see you again maybe next week in the next webinar around leadership. So with those words, I want to end the webinar and thank you for the three speakers for your big work and impressive work on social inclusion. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Very well done. Bye-bye.